some girls basketball players, I think, back in the day when I was a JUCO assistant from Dallas. And just a down-to-earth dude, man, humble dude, has grinded his way. Played at Cornell, was a big-time player there, one of the best three-point shooters that league has seen, and has been in the NBA, has been in the G League, has been a G League head coach, has been an NBA assistant with the Phoenix Suns, player development, and then now he's with Penny Hardaway in Memphis as an assistant. And like you would probably imagine, he was missing the first hour because they had a recruiting Zoom because they're one of the best recruiting staffs in the country. So we're excited to have all three guys on. Definitely give us a wealth of knowledge. And Cody's been at all levels, so we'll let him kind of just take it and run with it from here.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I apologize again. I'm gonna look forward to going back and watching the record. Obviously, I know Lamont well, and I respect everything that's going on over in San Francisco. I think that what I'd like to do is I'm going to take you guys through some stuff and kind of tell you how we used analytics at the NBA level, how we're using analytics here at Memphis, and kind of talk to you maybe about some things that I don't know, maybe you haven't heard of or heard about, and some ways that I think that we can, just be forward thinking and how we operate just with everything. All right, so let me share. Can I share my screen here?
Yep.
All right, share. All right, everybody can see this. So like this quote right here to me just defines everything that I try to be about, right? Be stubborn about your goals, but progressive in your methods. And if there's anything that's going on, it's going on over in San Francisco. Where these guys are committing fouls to get possessions back in the first half, things of that nature. I mean, that's off the charts. I just love that type of thinking, right? Because and I proposed this question to a couple of coaches. Randomly we're having a dinner. It was like, hey, if I give you a VHS tape, could you play that thing at your house right now? And everybody, nobody raised their hand. If I gave you a DVD, could you play it? Hell, my computer doesn't even play DVDs right now. If you gave me one, I couldn't play it. So that then, I just made the joke. You don't want to be the last guy relying on mid-range jumpers to win basketball games. And I think that it all comes down to the quote, right? This is how we've always done it, being just a deadly quote because it's going to kill you from being progressive. A lot of you guys have seen this stuff. I don't want to be redundant in nature, but what I'm looking at is, can we be ahead of the curve? Can we be progressive in how we look at the game of basketball? And if there's one thing I learned from the Houston Rockets organization, who, when I was with their G League team, RGV Vipers, the amount of data that we had access to and the amount that we were encouraged to be experimental, really just trying to change the way I think about things. And if there's one thing I respect about some of the great coaches at the NBA level, specifically a guy like Eric Spoelstra, is how he significantly changes his philosophies from year to year based upon his personnel. It's unbelievable. They lose Hassan Whiteside. We got Bam Adebayo leading the break. They're running all these high above the break double stagger screens, these Corver screens, right? And how they're flowing into things, how random is beautiful, and their spacing concepts. And the big thing is that we all learn, we've got to coach what we feel. We've got to coach what we know. But to me, the big thing is to always be learning, right? And then coach what you learn. I think that's a huge element because and it's funny because another guy, Hubie Brown, right? Like, so Mike Miller here played for Hubie. And we always start talking about, how Hubie did things. But the unique thing is that the same offense that Hubie was running with Mike, what made Hubie a great coach was that it wasn't the same offense he ran in, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. It's not the same offense he'd be running now. So the ability to change with the times and see what's next is huge. So to me, analytics is nothing more than the use of large data sets to help us make informed decisions. And as far as I can tell, that works for Jeff Bezos over at Amazon. So I think, we should probably look to employ some of these things ourselves, right? First thing here that I'm sure we've all seen right here is the shot spectrum. The Rockets really introduced it to the game of basketball. And, they started experimenting with their G League team. When I went to Northern Arizona, basically I brought that kind of philosophy with me back to the Phoenix Suns organization. This was actually our shot chart from my time in Northern Arizona. And I think a big thing is obviously us always analyzing and evaluating our shot charts as a program and on an individual level, and analyzing these shot charts after every single game, which is what we do at the NBA level with our pre and post game reporting. We only shot 6% of our shots were in the mid range. We actually shot the highest percent on those shots in the league, right? So we shot 44% on those shots, but we took the fewest amount, right? We really, again, you guys are all probably well versed in stuff like the field goal percentage. So we'll go to some other cool things that we were looking at, which is what we call good play percentage. What percentage of our scoring possessions come from high value zones? right? And that is obviously free throws, rim attempts, or three-point shots. And for us, when we were in northern Arizona, 87% of our possessions came. I was trying to think about and figure, hey, well, what should a goal be? And when I looked at kind of across, the league, the NBA level, and across the league at the G League level, to me, I really think you're going to be forward thinking if you can try to get to 80% of your scoring possessions coming from high value zones. And a big key behind that too is people understanding that you don't just chase high value shots, but you actually have to structure your offense to create high value shots. And those are entirely two different mentalities, right? People talk about why does the triangle offense, why would it not be successful today? And it's really apples to oranges, entirely different game, right? And the other thing is if you just took the triangle offense and you said, hey, let's just shoot more threes, right? Well, that's an offense that generates more mid-range shots. So chasing a three-point shot in and of itself, looking at it in a vacuum, is not necessarily a high-value shot. And of course, we know there's a personnel element behind that, specific more so at the NBA level, I'll say. But we also, we made 14.9% of our threes. And all of these charts right here, I'm big on data visualization. How can we see where are we at in relation to the whole, right? And I think that's a big thing, is understanding where you're at within your conference, within your league, right? And who's doing something different. And if so, if we analyze these different factors, maybe we can figure out why are they doing something different. And then that'll also help us with the opponent scout portion. But again, one thing that we did in Phoenix too with Igor that was huge is we always tried to show where we were at in relative to these other teams with charts and boards and things of that nature. And I think that was huge. Something simple that shows, hey, are we better at these things this year than we were last year? So we had this specific chart right here. This was the final one that we had for Northern Arizona. But every 5 games, this would come up on our film session, right? And say, hey, listen, man, we're improving here, right? Because there's wins and there's wins. And we're not just going to judge ourselves based on the final box score. Again, pace, right? So this is a chart right here for all NBA teams right here. There's not a single team that scores at a higher OER the longer they have the ball, right? This is all logical. We all know this when we think about it. But the funny thing is, I think more from a college mentality is we preach the first side, second side, third side, fourth side, fifth side. So, you know what I mean? We preach the song that never ends in terms of saying that we need to slow down, especially if we don't have as much talent, right? So the thought process is if I'm, playing at Cornell or Columbia or whatever, and we go play a high major opponent, man, we need to slow this game down. We need there to be fewer possessions. And, the reality of it is for all the college teams that I've seen as well and looked at and studied before last season was this trend actually holds true at the college level. We know fast break is fast break, but to me, the next 5 seconds is where the NBA has really figured out how to play conceptually, right? And they've taken their big jump forward is teams getting shots within the first 10 seconds. I can tell you here in Memphis, we shot 56.3% on shots taken in the first 10 seconds. We operated 28.6% of our offense in the first 10 seconds of the shot clock. Now, the next 10 seconds, we shot 45%. In the last 10 seconds, 32%. And so for us, we knew we were incentivized to attack a defense in transition and try to attack them before they can get set after that initial push. But it's one thing to understand it, and then it's the next thing to, again, build your offensive philosophies around it. One example would be at the Phoenix Suns, we had the youngest team in the NBA. And we were trying to figure out, man, why are we not able to play faster and find shots earlier in the clock, a higher volume of shots earlier in the clock? Well, thanks to Second Spectrum, we were able to figure out that we might have had the youngest team, and when the ball was actually inbounded, we were actually one of the quickest at getting it over half court into the opponent's coach's hash. However, we were one of the slowest on made baskets on real-time seconds that went by between time of made basket to time of inbound, right? So we were slow at getting the ball back in play. So we started scripting and rehearsing how to get the ball back in play. That's a little way that analytics can help you take a jump forward, right? So now all of a sudden, we're not preaching a certain guy bringing the ball in bounds. We're preaching nearest guy bringing the ball in bounds, right? We're preaching 5 only bring the ball in bounds if he's in the restricted, right? So we're trying to figure out ways that we can go back at these guys and try to attack them before they can get set so that we can try to get a shot within the first 10 seconds of the clock. And if anybody has any questions, I prefer this to be an opportunity for you guys to just jump in. Some different things right here, and I want to show you some stuff. We'll talk about offensive efficiency rating by play call. And I think that this is probably the most underused element of analytics. And this is what I did in Northern Arizona. What we did was we would, and I think this also opens up to a discussion about what's next on things like shot quality and quantified shooter impact. But right here, what we did was we would take all of our different series, right? We break it down, and these were our points per possession by series: last 3 games, last 5 games, and all games, right? And then what we'd also do is we'd look at plays that were called 5 times or fewer within the last 5 games, because these are plays that were least likely to be scouted. And so now all of a sudden, having this type of information, if we're coming out of a timeout situation, I would know going into that game, I can pull up one of my game cards, but I scripted out the game. So I scripted first and second play out of every single timeout, and basically stuck to that for sure for the first half. And then we had audible checkdowns moving into the second half, and obviously into games we had our need scenarios. But understanding which ones we had run heavily allowed us to take advantage of opponents not scouting out. Nobody's scouting more than 5 games out, especially NBA level games are coming fast, right? So that was big. And then we take that series and we break it down even further, right, into the actual play call subsets within each series. And we would break that down to last 5 games, last 3 games, and then we break that down in wins and losses. And another value on the wins versus losses is, for me as a coach, with our on-demand series, I could be like, hey, down here you see, 21 chase, right? A little more 21 chase in our losses than our wins, but in our wins, a little more Nash, right? So now just having that little reminder, hey, a little more Nash, right, helps me kind of think in situations when I need to dial something up for our guys, right, what to have prepared. And I would review this with our, with my assistant before every game. And so we'd have a plan going in. And then me and Igor, we would review this before every game. We'd have coffee at about 7 in the morning. We'd dial up what he called the menu for the game. And then all of our ATO sets, we would script. We would run in script during 5-on-0 during shoot around, as well as like our first play of the game, right? So nothing at the NBA level is happening by accident. I can assure you of that. And so you can just kind of see, all this stuff serves a purpose, right? And it just gives us an understanding of who we are, right? So there's a huge value in terms of analytics when we're taking a look at ourselves. And it opens up to the conversation of quantified shooter impact, which I think is really what's the next horizon for analytics. And that is on those stats that I just showed you, points per possession on each play call. But just because we ran the play and scored doesn't mean the play actually worked. Doesn't mean we created a high value shot out of the play, right? So some of that data could be skewed in a negative way. And so in order to weed that out, really there's 2 ways you can go, right? We talked about hustle stats as I got on here, and Lamont touched on, you got to having the same set of eyes on the same scenario is going to allow you to reduce muddy data, right? It's going to allow you to keep your data square on. And the same thing's true if you're going to use the eye test to determine whether or not a play worked, right? If we call a particular play and we come out and run it, and one guy thinks, well, okay, well that was kind of an open shot, this is a good look, or whatever the case may be, maybe we didn't score on that play, but we got a butt naked shot. Well, that play worked, right? But we just didn't get the points. So what the NBA has, because they're gathering the XY data through Second Spectrum, is they have what's called quantified shooter impact and expected field goal percentage. So they can run all the calculations, right, on all the stipulations, proximity of defender, shot location, all these different things to determine, what the average shooter under those circumstances would be expected to shoot, right? So we've all seen it maybe on Sports Center at various times. They've used the thing where you see if he shoots it, you see the field goal percentage deal going up and down. And that is, just what the expected is. Now, for instance, Devin Booker might take a shot that the average player shoots at 45%, and he might shoot it at 55%. So his quantified shooter impact is plus 10 effective field goal percentage points, right? So he's shooting above expected. And that's normal for like superstar level players, right? Like a Kevin Durant or whatever the case may be. But what you want to do is make sure that you're evaluating those types of things so you have an understanding. I use expected and quantified shooter impact a lot in my player development stuff, right? When I sit down with Book, I can say, listen, man, on these particular shots, you're shooting, 15 percentage points above, league average. I mean, that's an incredible stat. But on these, you're actually below league average, and you're a great shooter. Well, let's dial in on this particular scenario, and we can lock in on that. And I think that's where analytics is, can really be taken to the next level, because shot quality can happen on a possession. It can happen player by player. But what you can also do, and this is what we had in Houston first, was expected box scores. So in our pre and post game packets, all right, our post game packet, it would take into account the shot quality of every shot that was taken in that game. And it would come up with an expected points per possession on every single shot. And the damnedest thing you would get is, hey, we should have won this game. Right? Think about that, right? All the coaches, and we're sitting in the coaching, man, this is some BS right here. Like, what are we looking at? You know what I mean? Like, man, but the interesting aspect of it is what is valuable out of an expected score, right? Number one is, did we get good shots and just miss them that night, right? That helps us understand that. Two is, did we limit their good shots, but they just made them that night? As frustrating as it can be to lose a game where the expected score is you plus 5 or 7, right? Understanding that stuff can help you understand and mitigate, kind of your emotions with your team, right? Going into that next team meeting. Guys, listen, they made some tough shots, right? But we were right there. We forced the ones that we wanted. And it just allows you to have a better pulse, really, on like where you're at on both sides of the basketball. The other thing is defensive analytics, which is, becoming bigger and bigger. And this is where, you've got your two factions in the NBA. And kind of what I ended up being, I got, I studied like finance and economics and all that type of stuff. And so, and then I got versed in, in analytics with Houston and all that stuff. So I became our liaison. I was our coaching staff liaison to the analytics department. And you've got these guys who are really fervently sitting on one or the other side of this fence, right? And we've got like this imaginary wall up, and it's like, hey, the basketball guys, and then it's these numbers geeks over here. You know what I mean? And the thing is, people always say, hey, man, video don't lie. And then the numbers guys are going to say numbers don't lie. And the reality of it is the truth lies somewhere in between. Just an example right here is when in Phoenix, pick and roll coverage. So we decided, early on, like, we don't want to teach DeAndre to be back first. We wanted him to be up at the level of the screen, right? So we wanted to impact the ball at the level of the pick and roll. We were going to take a page out of the Oklahoma City Thunder playbook in regards to our pick and roll coverage. And we get a sample size in, and now I'm breaking down the numbers, and I'm like, man, like, I'm like, Igor, like, this is not working for us. We are not good at this, man, but we need to be like OKC. Like, we can be like OKC. That's not what he said, but the general thermostat on our staff was trending that direction. And we got some of the numbers back. I mean, great number right here. We are number one in contesting mid-range shots in the pick and roll. And then, I'm in there and I'm like, whoa. Let's look at who's the best at guarding the pick and roll, right? Number one, right? In points per direct, points per chance, all these different things. And when I look at it, Oklahoma City is actually not good, number one, right? So that was one factor in us changing our coverage. But number two, all the top teams in the NBA were actually not challenging that shot. That was not a contested shot. So they were conceding the mid-range jump shot in the pick and roll. And what they were trying to do is get their big back to the roll man, right? No roller behind mentality in their coverages, so that they had the one-on-one box out situation, right? And so by contesting these, once we did a further deep dive, we found that these weren't rear view contests. These were DeAndre contests. So now by DeAndre closing out up the line, he took himself out of the rebounding position on the other side. Not to mention on other situations, right? Teams who are aggressive at the point of the screen were conceding high rim rate and high corner three rate. Well, why is that, right? We know that the film piggybacks that by roller gets behind, ball gets behind, pressure on the low man, the next obvious pass is going to be that corner three. So what you're doing by being aggressive at the point of the screen in the pick and roll at the NBA level is you're really compromising yourself at the rim, and you're compromising yourself at the corner. And those are two of the most high value shots, putting a lot of pressure on your backside guy who's also more likely to foul. So what a lot of teams at the NBA level now are doing is they're playing 2-on-2 in the pick and roll. I mean, hell, San Francisco's probably doing it. I didn't watch, but just knowing the way that they are, right, forward thinking, is mentality is shift to drift. So the big thing though is the numbers in that perspective, right, could be skewed. You give a coach just a sheet of numbers, and it says, hell, we're green is good, right? And that's how we always had ours set up. And I'll kind of show you like my Lakers scouting report here. Like, green is good, red is bad, but that could be misleading, right, as well. So This is an example of scouting report for a March 2nd game here against the Lakers. And I'll also show you what we have out here in Memphis as well. But people talk a lot about using numbers and to evaluate, and that it can get overwhelming. And so the big thing to me is, like, I'm not going to sit here and walk you guys through like everything here. We all know a lot of these stuff, like the 4 factors and things of that nature. But to me, it's all about identifying trends, right? So when I'm looking at these things, my eyes gravitate towards certain things, right? Whether it's 3-point field goal rate being low, right? They're not shooting a lot of threes, right? Percentage also being low, right? So this is an area right here that we can exploit, right? Percentage and volume low. Guys not typically looking to shoot a high volume of these shots. So maybe we change one of our coverages, or maybe we help off of a specific guy a little bit more. We play that rover concept, right? Maybe we're more likely to tag in this game because we think that the roll is what's going to kill us, right? And then we've also got offensive actions right here. We've got the attempts per game. We've got the efficiency. Defensive actions, we've got the same. And we use all this then to put together the scouting report. For Igor, we had to write, it was like writing Gone with the Wind. But I'll turn your testament here to this substitutions right here, right? So we'll take the information on their substitution patterns, which are right here. So I'll have their last 5 game substitution patterns. And then what I'll do is I'll try to anticipate their substitutions. And what I would try to do was have a plan for how we're going to adjust our matchups or our coverages based upon their substitutions, right? And so we had a couple of distinct plans here. Number one, and then we always had our go-to, our first adjustment, and our second adjustment. And what we ended up doing, for instance, in this particular game that we won, the numbers showed that LeBron, this is another second spectrum number that we got, was at point of first contact. LeBron was able to gain 15 feet of ground on average on a drive. So that means when he made contact with his defender, right, he usually, before picking the ball up, ended up 15 feet closer to the basket. Like, think about that, right? That's crazy. So for us, we said, well, screw it. We don't care about we don't care about old boy McGee, right? So we're gonna put Kelly Oubre on McGee. Let's put DeAndre and LeBron, right? And that's a different matchup than you would think, right? But ultimately we ended up winning this game, and that was a big help because LeBron's a guy who tries to use his physicality, right? So using analytics to make that adjustment was big for us. The other thing that we always have is our situational player statistics, which I think just give us a good tail of the tape. And especially when you look at like offensive player actions, right? And this is great understanding of like LeBron, for instance, 24 pick and rolls a game, right? So, you can really get as micro as you want. And to me, like that, this is just kind of giving you a cheat sheet and a roadmap. And then you can see our offensive efficiency by play call as well has a sheet. And then you can kind of see the way we have it separated here is shot spectrum information as well as like rankings. So, and after every game, like I would write up our analytics summary and our deal and give this to coach. And this was kind of like the layman's terms, like, what the F was all that other shit that I had to look at to scroll down to get to this. But that to me was big. And, analytics plays a huge role in everything going on in the NBA. Let's talk about player development and use of analytics in practice, right? So now we talk about load. Load management's a big point of contention at the college level. Depending on who you ask, I don't know if Archie's on here, right? He gave his little his information on that. But the big thing is this, and I work also significantly as director of player development. I work significantly with our performance staff, and I was the liaison between them and our coaching staff as well. And so the big thing that we had in terms of that was, there's perceived load, there's mechanical load, and there's chronic load. And the big thing, perceived load is all about like how your mind responds, right? And your body's going to follow. And so, and this is where like psychoanalytics kind of comes into the next curve as well. That's kind of picking up traction. But if you went and walk to just, hit the golf course or whatever, and you go walk 18 holes, you're going to be tired, right? We're shorter at the end of our day than we are when we get out of bed for a reason, right? And that's because the load of our bodies, right? 9.8 meters per second squared, all of us learned in school, right, is just it's wearing on us. So whereas we like to think that load is nothing, and God knows how Michael Jordan could go play 18 holes of golf and be a savage in the game of basketball, it makes no sense. But we also have to understand that people's bodies react differently, and if our whole goal is to have us performing at optimal levels, we've got to be conscientious of this. So what we actually did was we would use our opponent's information right here. You can see we would use our opponent's information to understand if this was going to be, well, what intensity level this upcoming game was going to be at, right? And you can use just things like pace, right? So you can see the notes right here. So I put down, that Sacramento, they play fast, second in the league in pace. So we know that we have to be ready for an up and down game, right? And so then our recommendations for practice on this day was that high minute players should perform no more than 11 full speed transition defensive reps. And what we were tracking was high speed accelerations, high speed decelerations, max jumps, and repeated jumps. And so, this information helps us understand that if we want our guys to be at the best, recommended practice length, right, is going to be, under 60 minutes. Now, no coach really likes to hear that. But again, do we want 7 o'clock players? We want 10 a.m. players, right? So it ends up being our choice at the end of the day. So the other thing that we did was we developed an app, right? So Second Spectrum gathers hundreds of data points per second and does all this stuff. But during practice, minimal amounts of data are collected, right? And this was where what we wanted to do was we developed a player development app that would chart, map, and keep track of every session that any of our players did during the year. And it was really easy to use. Every single coach, video intern, everybody had access to this app. And so we actually are using the app here in Memphis as well. And what we would do now in the app too is we added a mindset element, right? So we talked about psychoanalytics. One thing we did in Phoenix was when the guys come into the building, one of our trainers would go over and ask them basically on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your day, right? Shittiest day ever, or, man, best day ever, whatever it is. I just had a child or whoever's, right? You don't know, right? So, and then we'd also ask them coming off of the floor, scale of 1 to 10, how hard was this practice? And the funny thing is that the guys who rated practices harder usually were having shittier days to begin with, and you and me, we do the same practice. We could have a different feeling towards the difficulty, but any session that was undertaken by any of our players, we would rate their mindset, right? So we'd rate their mindset at the beginning, low energy, ready to work, mindset at the end, mailed it in, gave max effort. We'd rate receptivity, engagement, where they detached, collaborative, and overall comprehension on whatever the skills that we worked on. Now, obviously, these psychoanalytics are subjective, but again, it holds value when you kind of put it in the context of the whole. And so, for instance, this is Precious's workout plan. We know that he did 296 sessions. We know how many were team, how many were group, how many were solo. We know how many were on court versus film. We know how many were team film versus individual film. And then we've got his player mindset chart, and we've got his focus emphasis. And so to me, this is just kind of gives you a snapshot of the player and where he is at. And then on the right, also what we did, which was something, and I mean, I want to have Second Spectrum in our practice facility. Like, that's the ultimate next, right? But we charted everything we could. We were keeping track of. And, Steve Donahue over at the University of Pennsylvania, my college coach, I mean, he's finding those 3 or 4, guys that have progressive mentality. Maybe they're in the computer science department or whatever. I mean, all this stuff that we did. So we developed the app, and I'll show you some of the other stuff we're doing with analytics here. But I mean, we have a budget. I can assure you the budget is not being spent on this stuff, right? Because Penny just wants to see that 1-page bullet point deal. But he's also very open to understanding what it's about and how we should change things. So right here with Precious, every single day in September and October and November, he came in, he did our Tiger 100. We've got a bunch of variations. Tiger 100, we got the Mike Miller 100, got the Penny Hardaway 100. I don't have my own 100, maybe one day, but I doubt that. And so for us, we chart his percentages. Left corner, left high quad, right corner, right high quad. And so you can see right here, he had growth in each of these areas except for from October to November from the right corner. And the interesting thing on that is, I'll just kind of pull one thing up to allow you guys to see another thing that I think makes it interesting is like, okay, well, right corner in practice, not so great. Okay, cool, whatever. But, what about, where is he in terms of, in the games? And so you can see right here his heat map, right? I mean, he's far better and more efficient in everything that he does on the left side of the floor versus the right side of the floor. So now we know that he's clearly not comfortable there. But we also know that he's successful there. So coming out of timeout situations, right, even though he's a right-handed player, we might want to look to get him set up somewhere on the left side of the floor and evaluate which direction he's driving off the closeouts that are being created in the natural and organic situations to then try to take advantage and exploit his strengths, and play more chess than checkers, if you will. So, that's why that's how it's being used. And this was Booker's right here, his player development chart. And the other thing too, when you look down at like book stuff too, we compare our in-game shot charts to our practice shot charts and try to identify those strengths and weaknesses by that. We use it, and what we do is we create like a SWOT analysis. I mean, it's just like a business term, as you guys have all heard: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and we use a lot of dashboard visualization. And the big thing in Phoenix was, again, we can't only look at the box score if we're going to go for wins, because that might be why I'm bald. Actually, I'm kidding. I was bald before I got there, but I didn't have all this gray in my beard. So, we didn't have a good roster. Like, we weren't going to be competing for a playoff spot no matter what we did. So, this was a way that we could, let our guys know that while it's not looking great, on SportsCenter, we are improving. Last thing I'll share with you guys, and then if anybody's got any questions, is what we're doing here at Memphis. So this is our pregame report at Memphis. You can see a lot of similarities. I just really love the color layout. I think it makes it easier to draw your attention to, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We were the most turn it over mother effers this side of the Mississippi. But we were number 1 in the country at defending the rim, number 2 in the country at defending the three-point line. So, there's a lot of good to take from this. And this kind of can help you figure out where to focus practice time as well. And it also helps you figure out, well, the opponent you're playing, like, what are they doing, right? And where are they good on offense, and where have they been successful on the defensive side? And then what I include down here for Penny is just our, some generalizations, right? Some of it is big time logical connection, real easy. Some of it's a little bit more in depth. But, we have our game goals, and we use, it doesn't look pretty here, right? Average game goals reached on offense was only 2, defense 4. But our game goals, we were looking at the average of the top 5 teams in the NCAA 2018-19 in these different categories, and, coming up with that information there. And then what we were also doing is we would have our post-game report. All this stuff's auto-generated. Nobody has to do anything but fire up our stuff, because what I did was went out and we got, I just got some computer science guys that like basketball that can do the coding for me. And, so we have APIs with different data services, and, this stuff's all auto-generated. And so we pull this stuff into the reports, and color coordinates itself. And, again, our budget is, maybe for storage, cloud storage, like $50 a month. So we get to see, if we achieve the goal, if we didn't achieve the goal, we get to see if it was, an extreme, like yellow is going to point to anything that is considered extreme per our parameters. And then, like obviously 10 rim attempts, we know that's low. Great job. We kept them off the rim. Again, you can see, 335 and turnover percentage, not good. So again, little roadmap for success, but we also always look at our extended box score, which to me has great value. Instead of just having all the traditional stuff, we have effective field goal percentage, rebounding percentages, usage percentages, and then good take percentage. And again, that's what percentage of our guys' shots were from high value zones. And we have it for the defense as well. And I think that's, just expanding your box score and looking at things with this light can help take you to some different levels. And then you can see, some of these would be like trends that we identified, like that we wanted to take a look at within the game. So, and then of course our reporting insights are down at the bottom, and you can see how simplified these are, right? Because this whole report can be extremely overwhelming. I understand that. And so what I learned early on is if you can't translate it, it's just like walking into, Spanish, 5th year, 4th year Spanish, right? You know what I mean? Or, taking one Spanish class, and then everybody said, man, God damn it, you can't speak Spanish, you mother effer. It's like, Yeah, no, like it takes a little bit more. So what I try to do is just translate all the stuff down here and make it as simple as I can for our guys. This is a similar process that is happening at the NBA. So um, that's all I got on that end. I don't know if anybody has any questions about stuff. I can answer
Yeah,
those.
I got one question, if that's okay. When you're talking about the offensive efficiency by play calls, so during the season, I was kind of getting the numbers for each of our plays, and we ran a play maybe 6-7 times during non-conference, and we made 4 out of 5 3-pointers, and so we started running it a bunch during conference and didn't do so well because everyone started scouting that. So we started getting weary about plays that we were doing well but not as frequent. Would y'all just, whenever y'all are doing successful in a play, y'all just keep on trying it more, or would you be weary on some plays so teams don't scout it so much?
So this goes to drives right into what I would call also a discussion on progressive offense, right? The NBA, you've got a million sets. You teach out of play calls, but what they are is they're actually reads and solutions. So it's conceptually based, right? So if you go back to our offensive efficiency rating deal or whatever, our 21 series, 21 was like our on-demand stuff. Our ATO package was separate, right? So what we had, and that's why I would get together with Igor in the morning. We'd look at how we did last time with our various play calls, right? But not everything is actually a play that's called. Like our guys we just tell them we want 21, boom, they're going to go execute 21. Now that doesn't mean the coach can't come up there and be like, hey, chase it, right? That's just a cue to get into 21 chase, or nash it. Or, more delay, we need more delay, or whatever it is. But, we're not walking it up and calling plays. Same thing we're doing here, right? So we're allowing our guys to play organically. Now your ATO package is separate, right? Where we're coming out and we're trying to dial up something based on, a look that we think we're going to get because of a way that they're covering something, or based upon a way that we think we can, exploit their coverage and force them to change it, things of that nature. So I think, take it back to your situation, right? Okay, early non-conference, you guys started running this play where it went well, right? It was good. And I don't know what volume it was, but I'm sure that early in conference too, it started to work, but then everybody scouted it. So that's why our specials, right, that Igor would call them, our crunch time stuff, we would cycle through that. Like Brad Stevens, right, his play card is going to change every game. And same thing with Igor. And it is an extensive play card. I'll show you guys one just because I think that's maybe an under, the planning that goes into the NBA, maybe I think is also something where, us as college coaches, because a free throw opportunity is an ATO, right? If you're really good, if you've got dial-ups now, a free throw can become, hey, we know we're getting a quick hitter coming back. But that requires great organization. And then, you've got to have things separated in terms of on demand. Like that's something that when a guy's in the middle of dribbling the ball up the court, if you yell it, they execute it, right? And then you've got to just also mix that in with allowing them to play, where you just say nothing, right? It's just, here you go. And they're going to naturally, organically get into one of these various things. And then, you have your menu, right, that you're going to go to where you're like, okay, like we haven't run this for 5 games. Like this is the one that's going to get us a 3, So for instance, in our Phoenix Suns playbook, man, we had 10 different gate plays, right? Like out of the same formation, right? So you're thinking, oh shit, how are you going to scout for that now? It's the same formation. You can't. And that's the other thing that if you want to be unscoutable, you should only probably use, I know, so Brad Stevens, he's operating on make and miss. So they're going to be 5 out on misses, and they're going to be all big ahead on makes. And they're going to play, with a standard, formation out of their 4-step alignment, where they're going to get more step-up screens out of after opponents make. We had a few families, but I wouldn't have too more than that, because Igor would always say we can find the scoring action within a specific family already, right? Like Spain for us was shoulder. So he's like, hey, how can we find shoulder out of open 4? How can we find shoulder out of open pass? How can we find shoulder out of, open dive kamikaze? And so shoulder was just what we added at the end. And there was always a logical connection for our players. I don't know if that helped or if I confused you even more, bro.
Yeah, no, that helped. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Cody,
Absolutely. I'm going to pull this deal up for you. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, B.
no, big time job so far, man. Definitely great for us to just, everybody we coach on the men's side, whether you're in high school, whether you're in college, all want to eventually get to the NBA. So just get them to understand how detail-oriented that level is and how much you have to be able to think and play is important. What do you think as far as so you've been a G League head coach, you've been an NBA assistant, you're now back in college at a high major situation. What is the things that you found to be the hardest to implement as far as analytics, and what do you think are the things that are kind of the common threads or easier things to kind of put in place for players to understand, let alone your coach? Because I'm sure Penny, even though he played in the NBA, he didn't play in the NBA during the time of analytics. So how hard was that too? I know that's a lot of stuff in one, but
Can you guys hear me?
a little bit.
Everybody can hear me?
Yeah, you can hear you now.
Hold up, I can't hear you guys. There we go. All right, so that's a great question, right? So first, I'll talk about like shot selection. People always say, man, like one of the people, a lot of the misconception about like the Houston Rockets is they say, I mean, like don't take mid range, right? And while I was there when D'Antoni first came in, and he had this great analogy, like I coached Kobe Bryant, I coached Carmelo Anthony, and that was a bad shot for them, and we showed the numbers, and it's a bad shot for every one of you mother effers in this gym too, right? Like there's that. But outside of the very first day, like he was like that's not how shot selection priorities are finding their way into these teams right now. Because when you tell a player he can't do something, he's probably more likely to do some stupid shit to try to prove you wrong, right? So instead of that, what we started doing was just devaluing those shots in everything we did across the board. So a non-paint two was if you didn't get into the paint, you're only going to get 1 point. We'll give you 1 point if you make it, but we're going to devalue that shot so that you understand that that's good defense. That's good defense. And we'd give you 2, if you got into the paint, and if you hit a corner 3 worth 4, above the break 3 worth 3. And so we did that here in Memphis. And so that really helped our guys just understand shot selection. So basically we got them to understand effective field goal percentage without using the word effective field goal percentage, right? And I think that was a little bit of a key. I mean, hell, I've coached Chris Walker, right? If he took a 10-minute walk and left his house, he'd get lost. So, for us, using an analytically forward-thinking deal and having a deep playbook when I'm coaching this guy, it's how is this information presented, which also goes to your opponent scout information, right? And this is like a historic conversation, right? If I say that your team is going to remember 2 out of these 3 things, which 2 are most important? Your base coverages, their personnel, right? Or their plays. Like, what's your 2, right? Everybody could be different. For me, it comes down to personnel and our base coverages. And that's why game plan adjustments at the NBA level, you're always playing really, really good players, but you can't change your entire coverage. You can't change your scheme. Like, you can't do that. Now, you can't say, hey, okay, so we got Steph Curry tonight, right? So we're going to go hot guy, teeter-totter, like, which for us was our terminology for let Draymond shoot that mother effer as much as he can from 3. You know what I mean? So now we get our guys are rover, and, we're going to be attached, like, and then it's like, hey, are we a switching team? Are we not? Then our guys just have to do what they do. And so to me, like, that's a big element. And what do we share with our guys? We actually don't share anything with our guys. We don't give them a piece of paper. None of our guys in Phoenix got a piece of paper. What they got was personnel edits that were sent to their iPad. And on those personnel edits, it would just be like, there would be like a title slide, just reemphasizing our base coverages. And then any game plan adjustments would be in there as well with videos demonstrating them.
So you mean as far as the scouting report, you guys didn't give out any scouting report, all video?
Nothing. No paper. We went green, no paper. The videos could be pushed onto their phones via Lucio has the platform that we used. And then, that leads to another one you talk about. So I used my end of game stuff, all my needs stuff. I used an iPad. And so what I had on the iPad is basically, I had a whiteboard on the iPad, and I load up the play there based on the situation. I'd already predetermined, right? Catch and shoot 3, need a 3 side out of bounds. Need a 2. I had it 2 seconds or less, right, which was off the catch, right, 2 to 6 seconds or 6 seconds or more. And so now based on that situation, once I hit, boom, I want to show this play, it's going to come up and the numbers are going to come up and it's going to superimpose onto the screen. And this is what Nick Nurse uses, the same platform. And so now from here, right, I just have to dictate, you're the 1, you're the 2, you're the 3. So now boom, okay, play it, and it'll move like it's an animated deal. And now if anybody has any issues, I can always pause it and I could draw on it, right? Which is just like a progressive use of technology. We also had, if we had ran that play in practice, we would have that there available as well, right? So half of my job in Phoenix was TJ Warren's ATO handholder, you know what I mean? And so I'd have all of our ATOs would be dialed up. Like I'd have video if we'd ran it before. I mean, there'd be times, I swear this dude, I have to pull him to the side and be like, yo, TJ, you got that? And he'd be like, no, what's up, bro? What do we got? And so I'd be like, this is the play. We ran it against New York 3 weeks ago. Oh, yeah, man, I got the corner 3. That's my play. All right, that's my jam. Let's roll. And, but it's really interesting because technology can be overwhelming. So I think you really have to have a focused understanding of how you're going to implement it. If you implement it randomly, I think it can have very negative effects. There's no doubt.
Cody, that's big time.
Last part of that question is, how was it with Penny? Because you're coming from the NBA where you have used analytics. So Coach Wilson kind of talked about this earlier. He was the former head coach at Pepperdine. He's now the assistant at Cal Berkeley. And just that's not something that he was as comfortable with. So for Penny, probably the same thing. How did you get him to be more comfortable with using so much analytics within the program?
I mean, the thing about Penny that is probably the best part about working for him is that he brought me in here for a reason, and it's very specific. Player development, okay, cool. Offense, okay, cool, and analytics. That was an element. And so he's super open-minded. He'll call me up. He wants to know what a lot of this stuff means. He'll call me up to the front of the plane and be like, can you explain this to me a little bit more? Let's have a conversation about this element, right? So he's really curious about these types of things, and he wants us to be on the cutting edge. He wants us to be progressive about it. And now our use and implementation of it, right? Of course, there's one guy in the room that's championing it, right? But we're going to talk about whether this is smart, that's smart, for instance, using an iPad. I don't even know if it's allowed in the NCAA, but Coach wasn't super comfortable with that. Cool. His board game he's good at it. So that's fine. My job is just to bring him ideas and ways we can probably get better. And then whatever he decides to go with, we rock out on. If not, I'll bring him 100 more ideas tomorrow. And, he's great about wanting to hear all the ideas and then processing them. And then he always takes some time and comes back to me. And then he's like, okay, I liked out of the, 10 bullet points you hit me with, these 3 are interesting to me. Tell me a little bit more about these 3. And then, we kind of whittle it down from there. So, but, lucky for me, he's pretty progressive about this stuff.
Big time. Thanks, man.
Cody, I thought that was awesome, man. Good to see you too, by the way. Appreciate you coming on. One little small story about Cody, guys, his energy hasn't changed, since he was a prep coach. And again, I wish we had enough time that these guys would really understand. They probably see Memphis across your chest and go, oh, this big time guy. But how much of a grind that you have grinded to get to where you are and what you become. And kudos to you, man. I'm blown away by some of this stuff that you're doing. And guys are texting me now, hey, can you ask this? Can you ask that? So I'm going to throw out a few things I think are tremendous just points, and then I'm going to ask you for one thing to show us. But I think it's very important that you said earlier that in AAU, the wins within the wins. Yeah. Because everybody's program's at a different level. I went to Golden State this year, and they're not winning any games. But it was a big deal for them at a portion of their season to chart if their post guys were rim running. Hey, if their guards were getting off the ball more than 3 dribbles. And so they would chart those things, and when they won it, they would celebrate it because they weren't winning games. And as you know, the grind of losing games and the frustration of that, and sometimes people not knowing the development piece, or are you getting better? And, hey, you may be losing games, but you're getting better in areas. So I think that's a huge piece that analytics can bring that I thought was outstanding. The second piece of that deal is that player development stuff is off the charts. I mean, to be able not only for your guys, but we all talk about it in recruiting. Hey, we're going to get you better. Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. And just to be able to present that to someone in their living room of like, hey, this is what Precious did. Hey, this is what James did is outstanding, man. I think you guys are on to something there. And then the last thing I would say for you is that do you have you said you're going to show us a play card.
Yeah.
Do you mind showing us a play card?
Got it right here. Exactly.
And then when you show that play card, what were you talking about when you said menu? Tell us the difference between the play card itself. Is the play card the menu, or is there a different terminology that you're using with that?
Yeah, no, the play card's the menu. It is the menu. And so it changes. I mean, this is like a living organism, right?
So the menu changes per game, I think is what you were saying.
Exactly. You know what I mean? I mean, we can't eat Mexican every night. And I do love my wife's spaghetti, but, you know, I mean, if it's every night, you know, I'm probably going to fall out of love with it. So, so this is just an example of the menu. We use something very similar in Houston, or excuse me, in Northern Arizona and in Houston, I mean, actually. So you've got like our overall menu right here, you know what I mean? But then this is the script, tonight's script, if you will. And so we were big. This started with, you know, Nick Nurse and you know, went to Chris Finch, who then took it to Kevin McHale, who then, you know, we convinced D'Antoni to do it on occasion. But it's first play, second play, right? Like, and a lot of people probably doubt the ability of their players to remember 2 plays out of a timeout and then to understand when to execute them. But I promise you guys can, if it's something that you're interested in. It gives you a little bit more control on an intermediate level. But then what you're doing is if you go this route, you have to release the reins for a significant portion of what you're doing too, right? So what we always did, first play was going to be like a special. That is not an on-demand play. That is something that, you know, that's going to be a specific look, right? Like right here, you've got quick double Spain hitch. Okay, so that's going to be, you know, one of our plays, logical connection based on our terminology. And then the second play is just through, right? So, and that's kind of more just like that little reminder where it's like, I need a little bit more 21 Nash in my life, you know, and wins. And so the first play, we're going to come out, you know, maybe we're going to try to hit him, get a 3, first play of the game. Second play of the game, we're going to get through, right? That's this quick second side hitter. Cool. Now we go into the next timeout, right? We're going to run 5 Australia. And the look we're trying to get is a slot drive. We're going to isolate the nail defender, and we're going to get a stampede on the slot. Cool. Second play is going to be 21 reset slip. Now, a couple interesting things coming out of the timeouts to remember. One, is it your ball coming out of the timeout, right? Because if it's your ball, the next play is the first play. But if it's not your ball and you get a stop, this is where you have to practice this. Your next play might be a transition opportunity. Don't ever kill the break, right, to go to the look, right? So you want the break because you know, man, if we can score quick, that's going to be good for us. So you give your guys that freedom. So your guys have to understand, when do we not have that transition and when do we run the play? Because the other thing is, if you look for the transition and don't get it, you don't want to back it out and then run the play because there's going to be too many unnecessary overlaps. So our general rule of thumb was overlaps are bad, unnecessary and unpurposeful overlaps, right? Overlaps are good in some of our offensive concepts like 21 chase, like pistol action with a purposeful overlap. So what we wanted to do was play random on misses, right, out of our concepts. But if the next time they made it, that's when we're in first play. And our trigger was 1 equals first play. It's not play 1, it's first play. So when they made a bucket, our point guard now is going to put up the 1, and we all know what we're doing. But if you're going to do this, you have to practice this. Like you come out of a water break, you draw it up. This is where, and that's also how we did all of our special situations out of the water break. Random ass special situations. Nobody knows what they are, and we don't do it so one team runs it, and then the next team gets to do the same scenario. We would do 2 separate scenarios, and then we'd cycle through, and then 2 weeks later, the one team that maybe did the need of 3 the other team's gonna do the need of 3. You know what I mean? But that also helped us with that flow, knowing when to transition fast break and when to run the play. Because we also try to push out a make. So our guys got to feel eventually when to run first play, and then second play is always something that they know. So if TJ forgot, I would always be able to give him a verbal cue on the second play.
Cody, I have a question for you. You just brought something up that's just a topic that we can discuss a little bit. When I was at New Mexico with Craig Neal, obviously he's got a history of being in the NBA, played in the NBA. He's the only coach that I ever worked for that did draw-ups.
Mm-hmm.
everybody else, if we weren't working on it daily and we didn't do it, what do you guys do at Memphis? And have you seen that if you do drops, what's the translation as far as the analytic part of it being successful for you?
You know what's funny about that is, like, so we had that conversation, like, in RGV, like Houston Rockets had us start experimenting with how we were holding the board, right? So they wanted us to come out of timeouts with drops, and they wanted us, like, we would be scripted in one timeout to have the board like this, right? And then Brazzy's going to switch the board, and he's going to switch it around. And I'm like, you know, I mean, it was getting me dizzy, right? But, you know, I think, to me, I am not 100% off of a randomization, but to me, we have so much at our disposal that's what those early morning meetings were with Igor, right? To dial up the ATOs for the night, right? Now, are we going to stick to this script in the fourth quarter? You know what I mean? Like, we're typically saying, as long as this is like a 1 to 2 possession game, we're going to stick to the script, right? The minute it deviates, we had what we call a panic chart. And so now all of a sudden the game plan shifts. And so now all of a sudden our plays that we want to run shift. And so that whole element, then we've got our crunch time chart, which is close game. You know, this is our Bible. And so to me, though, I think if you haven't executed it in your script at your shoot around, I tend to shy away from it for sure. That's my general thought. Because I think we can plan for a lot of these scenarios at shoot around.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Hey, Monty, this is Marty. I got a question for Cody. Cody, this is Marty Wilson up at Cal Berkeley.
So, Coach.
I'm good, man. Good. Hey, I'm looking at your play card, hearing just your terminology, and probably some people would get lost in some of this. And I worked for Jim Boylan, who's with the Bulls now, his first year at Utah, and he elected me initially the offensive coordinator. And I had never been in a system in college in all my years where you had an offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. And we had so many plays that it became overwhelming for me. And I had been in college and coaching for a while, so let alone our players understanding it. But the way he explained it to me is not worry about the play, it's the action. And you talked about some of that. Can we get a Nash out of I think he's called a shoulder out of 21? Can we get a this or this or this? Can you explain more about that? And that simplified everything for me once he taught me that.
Yeah. So it's funny because you're exactly right. Like, this whole deal here could be like overwhelming. Like, how are all our guys we're going to remember this? So some of the keys that Igor was big on was we called them families or formations, right? So out of our different formations now, there was always a logical connection between every play. So if you set it in your mind, you are going to know the play. So for instance, let's just take a look at 5 Australia slot drive. So 5, that means you're going to be in our delay 5 out formation. That's the first one. Australia, right? That was our terminology for a down screen into an up screen or an under screen, which down under, Australia, right? And then slot drive was the action that we were looking for. So Igor was huge on a logical connection between everything. And to me, that's the biggest. The scoring action is always the last one. So we would always go formation / family. All right. We would go essentially from there, we would go, to your play type, and then we would go to your scoring action. And the scoring action part ends up being the most important part. And that's how we were able to try to disguise that's how the NBA teams are disguising all their ATOs. Because if they come out of the same formation, and that's also how, if you mess it up, something good will happen. The minute you start throwing different formations, I'm the 4-man, I got to be on the right elbow. I'm the 4-man, I got to be in the left corner. I'm the 4-man, I got to be in the right. I'm the 4-man, I got to, on this specific play, for this play to work, our 4-man has to be in this spot, right? That provides a level of inflexibility then that can handcuff you. If you stay in the same formation, even if the shit goes terribly wrong, typically you'll see something you're familiar with, and then you can reevaluate. And I'll show you guys actually our So like our Phoenix playbook, how we have it all diagrammed here. So PH. Any more questions while I'm finding this?
Yeah, I got a question, Cody. Can you guys
Yep.
hear me? Kevin Hubby, San Francisco.
Yes.
Yeah, this is really interesting. And we do, I would say, a lot of the same stuff at San Francisco. And one of the things that we have run into over the years when tracking like play calls and also direct action is just the lack of sample size in order to make a decision, a coaching decision. And that's where I think it generally, in the world of analytics and in college basketball specifically, you can get yourself in trouble a little bit if you're looking at data that is low sample size and trying to make those decisions. And that's where, like, when you talked about, like, I think Marty was just talking about like direct actions as opposed to play calls, we've found to be more valuable, especially in college, because, you know, you're only playing 40-minute game and 30 games, so about 1,200 minutes, whereas, you know, in the NBA, it's about 4 times that. So you just get a lot more data, and the games are faster because the shot clock, so you're getting more data points. So I was just interested to see what you think about what's a good number of, for example, of possessions for in order to, you know, be able to be confident that, all right, this play call works, this play call doesn't work. And then the other thing that I was interested in with your experience in the NBA is, like, you know, from what I know about the NBA, from the people that I'm close with, like the coverages, as you mentioned, like you guys, there's more coverages in the NBA. And maybe that just, like in pick and roll coverages, for example, maybe that's just having better players and higher basketball IQ. But with all the data, and again, a lot of the data, we look at very similar things in scouting and with our own team. Like, we still only have 3 different pick and roll coverages. And even when we're going against a team that we know could be really good in the pick and roll, or a certain player, or we're still probably just going to stay with what we do and live with the results. And I'm interested to see what you think about that idea of trying to change something going into a game where analytically you know that, oh, we're going against a point guard who's incredible in the middle pick and roll. What would you try to change that at Memphis versus what you would try to do if you were still working in the NBA?
Yeah, good, very good question. So number one is, I'll say, yeah, try playing like drop coverage against Steph Curry, and they move the level of the screen, you know, retardedly high, force your guy over the screen, and he pulls that 3, right? So, you know, it's a chess match. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I know that's not what anybody ever wants to hear, right? But to me, there's a lot of feel behind it, and there's also a lot of feel behind whether or not you think a play is going to work. You know, and so that's why I feel like the next thing is, like, if you just take the data and you just say, hey, like, okay, like we score 2 points per possession on this play. Oh man, this is a radical play. This is an amazing play. But like, you got to evaluate, you know, the quality of the shots that you're getting, and then the coverage that you're going against. And so I think when you separate into those types of things, right, like plays that you run for pick and rolls versus ice coverage, right? Well, there's 2 things you can do against ice coverage. You can try to break the coverage by getting to the middle, or you can accept the coverage and have your solution be acceptance-based, right? And so to me, I think you got to prepare for both, right? Because if the coverage is killing you, you got to have a check down and an adjustment. But in the same sense, if I watch a play be ran 2, 3, 4 times, and like Book gets a pretty good shot, doesn't make it, I still might feel pretty good about this play. So that's why, to me, volume, if it's going to go into our playbook, I already feel like it's going to work if it's going to go into the playbook. So now volume to me just becomes playing the game as, yeah, you think these mother effers have seen it or not? You think they'll remember it? Can we get them on that, you know, backdoor? Because, I mean, hell, Murray State knew that Belmont was going to do that damn backdoor this year, right? I felt bad for Tim Kaine, you know, because they still got him on it at the end of the game, right? So it's kind of like, to me, like, I just, and it comes back to how I have this set up. So I'll just show you guys right here, right? So you got families. So here are all our different families. So we've got our own open family, pistol, stack, horns, diagonal, all these different families. But then you've got the actions. Here's the actions, right? Quick action, shoulder, snap, post-ups, post to pass, Spanulis, stampede action, versus zone, kamikaze, hammers, Kansas, lobs, logos, gates, flares, Finlands, drags, corner pins. You know what I mean? Like, it goes on and on. But like, this is how we put the whole deal together, right? And so, and then you've got like our end of game stuff, our packages. So it gets extensive. However, when you go to the actual action at the end, like Barca action, or which for us is like it's coming from Barcelona. It's like a double zipper, Chicago action, like screening the dunk spot guy. Like at the very end of the day with our guys, they will know these actions and we will break these down. And it comes back to our player development. You really want to know how to coach out action based. You got to be player development, read and react based, and you got to layer up how you do that. And you got to do more combo work, which I think is where the majority of time teams do too much post perimeter. Like if I'm rolling all the time and Boogie Ellis is throwing me pocket passes, we're building a chemistry. And that's the difference between when I was playing overseas too, like in Spain and everything, it's all combo work. And hell, they got the centers like coming off the pick and rolls. So you're building chemistry with these guys.
Cody.
Back to on demand on the back right here, need situations right here. And then some of our stuff like from in game, like what's cooking, what converted. So.
Cody, and this goes along with Kevin, what you were saying too. Like I've struggled with trying to create like sort of a shot quality for us as well with our sets and with our motion. So I kind of just made it sort of an off-season project to go in and look. And again, the kind of issue of sample size comes up because maybe we ran a certain action at the end of a clock 18 times on the year and we were really successful at getting a good shot off or drawing a foul, and all that kind of factors in. But how do you, obviously without second spectrum, without like a quantified shooter impact score that's generated in college, is it just something you kind of have to do manually? Like, I mean, in games, I'm tracking our offensive possession, so I'm tracking what we're running. We kind of moved to a more motion-based offense this year where we didn't call as many sets. And coach kind of felt, to sort of lessen the joystick ability of the game this year, and felt really strongly about that. And so that's what we did. And I mean, we ran our motion where we essentially didn't call a set 467 possessions this year. So about 16 possessions a game where we weren't really calling anything. Then there's and we also played only about 65 possessions a game. So we were 350th in pace.
Yeah.
And transition, and then there's like specific sets we ran, but like for instance, drags, like we were 1.18 point per possession on drags this year. Like we were just really good at it for whatever reason, probably because we had the player of the year, just getting in the paint and scoring. But I guess that's long-winded to just say, like, how do you in college, are you just like manually kind of doing that? Like when it comes to shot quality, is it more arbitrary, or like what's a good proxy for shot quality?
So this is what we're going to go to next year. Something I've given a lot of thought to, right, is I'm going to go to a 5-point scale. Just keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to run the play. And so obviously, like, we're going to keep track of that. And after the game's over and I go back through and I'm reviewing, I'm just going to say, hey, scale of 1 to 5, 5 being a great shot, like, just what was it? Yeah. That's going to give us some data point, right? I mean, it's going to be subjective in nature, but some of the second spectrum data too. I mean, their closeout situation is all XY based, right? Like it's just proximity based. It's not hand up, hand down, right? Because we all know if I'm standing right there in front of Damian Lillard, this dude ain't missing, right? So, I think that the 5-point scale is going to be my go-to, and that's it. And then, I'm going back and reviewing all of our stuff from this year and trying to see, well, certain ones, why didn't these certain ones, like what did we do wrong? Are we not good at screening angles? Are we not good at getting out of the screen? Are we not good at holding the advantage when we get the advantage in the pick and roll? And then that's kind of shaping some of our player development stuff whenever we can get back on the court.
Yeah, that's good. As a follow-up to that also, and Kevin, I'd be curious to hear what you say too, is like, because when I was doing it, I did a 5-point scale as well when I was going through our quality, and there were certain actions that I thought were like really close to like 4, like 4.0 or so, which was really good. Drags being one of them, and I want, like,
well, let me interject right there too. So yeah. I would separate. This is how I'm separating it, right? So you've got a play that results in an action where that action results in hopefully a catch and shoot. Mm-hmm. Then you've got plays, right, where that action results in a post up. Is it a post to score or is it post to pass, right? Because those shouldn't be coincidental. And then you've got action that can result in what we call stampedes at the NBA level, right? So at the NBA, you're usually coming out of a timeout. You are going to try to create a rim attempt or a catch and shoot 3, right? And then you've got what we call organic stuff, like you're talking about your drags, right? So the quality of shot in your drag is based on so many other variables, right? So you rate your drag 4. Well, but what you got to rate it in several different categories. Ball handler 4, roller 4, and then you've got to do, is it direct or indirect? Because to me, I'm going to rate, this is actually what I'm doing, rating our drags on ball handler quality, right? So that becomes score pass decision. Roller quality, that becomes, did you roll restricted, short roll, whatever, catch, no catch, finish, no finish, or pass to roll man, pass to corner, and one more pass, right? So anything that is more than 2 passes out of the pick and roll, null and void, that drag didn't work. But if we create a shot, right, on 0 passes, 1 pass, or 2 passes, now we've got to rate that shot with a subset.
Right. What I was getting to is like, it's just you looking at this, correct? Like, I mean, Kevin, kind of, you were talking about like, you're the only guy kind of looking at that specific thing. Like, you're not getting a set of 3 or 4 eyes on that to average a score. It's like, this is my, subjective.
I wanted to jump in too, and obviously this is getting like pretty nerdy and high level. But like, the 5-point scale.
Let me get my glasses on.
So the 5-point scale is really interesting, and I've been doing that for the past 3 years in addition to our hustle stats. And so like, I'll just share this one more time. So this is something that I was thinking about talking about today, but if you guys can see that. So this is how I do it. And where are we? Final possession quality. So this is my scale. Like, these green are 5s, and these are like uncontested 3s off the catch, uncontested layups. And I go down, 4s are still good. And then 3s are okay shots. And then 2s are pretty much all mid-range. And then 1s and 0s are like different kinds of turnovers. And so that's how I do it. And this is like my method. This is the totals of each day. But like, for example, this was our game at Gonzaga. And every half-court possession. So when we don't get transition, and I don't track transition just because I think one thing that skews the data is like, if you get a steal dunk, like, I don't really care. I don't think I can coach that. I just think that's having good players or making a good defensive play. So this is every half-court possession.
I'll just do you mind if I interject on that part, right? Like, so I agree, right? So we classified that as numbers. Numbers advantage break, right, is not going to count for us as transition, right? So basically our early offense is transition.
Yeah, that's great. So you're basically taking those possessions out, which I think is great. Yes. And I've done it before. The first year I did it, I kept transition. And then I realized after the year, I was like, all right, I need to break this down into half court because I can't coach this. I need to figure out what I can coach. But this is my process. So like, here's the game. This is the possession number. And then what happened. So the BTO is bad turnover, but like, what was the end of the possession? And then the quality is the 0 through 5 scale, which player ended the possession. And then these are, did we get a paint touch? And how did we get that paint touch? Whether it was a drive, post feed, the X is no paint touch. What happened? And then I added offensive rebound, which is a different thing. But that's like, so my final and this is just this year, and I have it across all 3 years on every specific type of shot you can kind of see. So like, I think it's pretty valuable. And just when you guys started talking about the scale, I figured I had to jump in. Just
that's awesome
That's
stuff,
great
man.
stuff, man. That's great stuff, Kevin.
Yeah.
Hey, Kevin, I got a question for you. I know Cody does the player development and seen some of his stuff. Do you spearhead your player development there at San Francisco? I know college is I feel like Memphis is a –
what's up, coach?
They're doing some NBA type shit. And so I know they're a little bit different, but I don't know college, and I kind of know Todd's background. Are you kind of spearheading when I say spearheading, like, hey, I may not be in charge of the workout, but if we're going to do some offensive stuff, I'm going to tell them what how we're scripting it today.
Yep, I would say so. Like, because we do the coordinator system here. So, and Kyle does it too. So I was kind of Kyle's offensive coordinator, and like the Hoodie was with us, obviously, but like he wanted to. I have a lot of experience in the Princeton offense because I played in it. So that's why he kind of decided he wanted to go that way. So that kind of became organic. But yeah, a lot of the stuff we do in individual workouts is based on, like Cody was talking about, the actions. So just like Girl of Sin was doing for you, I'm sure at San Diego. I know it. He was, I'm sure, a lot of stuff, and even like watching you guys pregame. I always liked watching San Diego pregame. Like they were out there getting all different kinds of shots, and it's kind of the same stuff, I would say.
Yeah, I got a question. First off, man, y'all this high level, like this is this is real new to me, but I appreciate y'all taking y'all time to break a lot of this information down. My head coach
Who's
is
talking?
more,
Who's talking?
oh, it's Mike Scott, assistant over at
Coach
Cal
Scott.
State Bakersfield.
Bakersfield.
Um, my head coach is a defensive minded, like to the core type of person. Could you guys, and this is probably for the three guys that talk, Adam, Cody, and Kevin, could you guys give, I guess, your top 3 to 5 categories? Because I'm just starting out with analytics and kind of recording all of this stuff, and we don't have a big staff. But I do want to get into, I guess, your top 3 to 5 defensive things to stat as far as collecting data and dealing with your team, as far as the things that you've had success with.
Let's do all three. Let's go Adam first, if you don't mind. Then go Kevin. Then go Cody.
Yeah.
Perfect.
No, go ahead, run it. I wasn't paying. I'm over here dealing with my little kid, but
Yeah.
just repeat the question real quick because he's over here. He's acting up.
What's your top 3 to 5 defensive analytical kind of measuring points that you evaluate when you're defending / evaluating your team, how you defended / going into scouting?
Yeah. So like if you would
I'll jump in if you want.
Go ahead, Kev.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I would say the transition is first. So like, if you have rules for your guys that when you miss a shot or turn the ball over and they have to get back, like just a negative for if they don't do their job in transition, and then pick and roll coverages. I think that's the next thing. So like obviously your bigs and guards are going to be different. Just if somebody screws up a coverage or gets screened, just hit them with a negative. I think that just those two things I think are probably the two most important things defensively. Just being good in transition and then ball screen coverages.
Okay, yeah. No, I'm ready now. We track kills, and that's obviously 3 stops in a row. That's usually the game momentum. Our magic number last season was 6, and that gave us like a 94% chance to win. We didn't get that a lot, so we didn't do that well this year as we should have. But I'd say kills, paint touches, and the result, again, we did that offensively and defensively where we're giving up paint touches, and then contested versus uncontested shots. Like those are 3 things that and we also, but we tracked more. We tracked post touches and what the result was, and then live ball turnovers versus dead ball turnovers. And that goes both ways. If we can, our coach would like to be disruptive. We weren't very good defensively, so it was hard for us. But if we could be disruptive and we can get like Kevin was saying and Cody was saying, we get some runouts, some easy buckets where we don't do anything and just hopefully have good players to do that.
Yeah, I think all those things are good. Kills, like we track that as well. We had a defensive accountability kind of code window, right? And that also, there pick and roll, transition, but then the other subset was cycle of help, right? And so cycle of help was like low man responsibilities, crackback responsibilities, and then the last thing was finish the play. And so, basically if you go through there, you calculate, and can give a guy a grade based off of that. And so like our video coordinator in Phoenix did defensive accountability. I did the offensive stuff. And then, our guys would get like a grade, right? And so, he would basically tag every time like you were low man, right? So those were your opportunities. And then outside your opportunities, like you were either successful or unsuccessful, right? And so then, that was what we did. We also, we did it on pick and roll as well, right? Like, so your subset of the pick and roll is not just whether they scored or didn't score, right? Like, so our first one was like on the ball. All right. So obviously you can't tell if they're communicating on the film, really. You can kind of tell maybe, but it's first step into the ball. So did we jam, right? On the call, did we jam the ball to put us to escort the guy into the coverage? And then depending on like our principles, like, if it's like, are we drop in the middle or so if we're drop, right, like where do we want our big, right? If your guys are supposed to be up to touch or whatever, right, this would be where you rate them on their touch point. Mm-hmm. And then, if a guy's going downhill, like we have veer back terminology, right, which would be like a switch below the foul line. Did it get below the foul line? Did we switch it or not switch it? And so it's like those are, you kind of just working backwards from whatever your coach likes, right? Like the low man baseline drive, are you trapping outside the box like traditional or whatever? Like if that's the case, that could be a point that you could chart. Now that the key is, right, like Lamont talked about, is, his staff at San Diego is different than our staff in the Phoenix Suns. You know what I mean? Like, and this is where I would say that Steve Donahue's done a great job of really tapping into the resources that he has by the aspiring, analytics junkies at the University of Pennsylvania that are all, they're in the Wharton School of Business, and they're all trying to, maybe they want to be GM, maybe want to be the next Sam Presti, right? So there might be somebody at your computer sciences department that's playing Fortnite and thinking about analytics. So can you find that dude?
Good point.
Real quick, Al, I wanted to jump this to you too, because obviously I work with you at UTEP, and I think the win within the win, you did a great job of introducing that with our team as we were kind of building a culture there, and then also some of the things defensively that you thought were important, because you really changed the whole defensive approach from San Diego and where you were in your early years versus your last year. So what are some of the things that you kind of kept track of?
Well, I think it's really kind of based off some of the analytics. I mean, I think if you think about the game, and we've kind of shared this with guys as we did our defensive stuff, but what kind of shots do you want on offense? I want to lay up, I want to dunk, I want a free throw, and I want a wide open three, or a wide open shot. Really, I say a wide open three because I hate twos, but that's just me personally. So within that, we had our 5 pillars of defense, which I shared, with guys. And so, we didn't want shit in the paint. I seen Kevin's stuff of, on offense, did they get to the paint? And as I was watching some of their stuff in the paint, you look at the other column and it's made 3, layup, free throw. So we tried to keep guys out of the paint. We wanted guys, we endorsed guys playing twos over hands. And that's why I love that premise. Cody talked about 2-versus-2 versus ball screens. In the West Coast Conference, if you're going to try to tag ball screens, between St. Mary's, San Francisco, Gonzaga, they're going to light your ass up because they know all the ball screen reads. They're going to throw back, and if you're tagging from the pair side like St. Mary's does, they're going to hit you in the corner. You're just going to give up so many threes. So we didn't want paint touches. We wanted guys twos over hands. We weren't giving up threes. Obviously, you got to finish stops. You got to finish stops with rebounds, which we weren't very good at San Diego because we're so small and not that tough. And keep guys off the free throw line. And so I just think, it's those things that I think that came back to the analytics in a lot of ways that Adam has shown and Cody has shown and Kevin has shown. But again, I think it's who you are. What do you want? How do you want to play? You have to be authentic within yourself. And that's who we were. That's what we stayed steadfast with those things. And so Coach Terry was great, allowing me to bring those things to UTEP. And I thought it did help us. And I thought it was consistent. It's not something that changes every game or changes this. It's like Cody said, they have their coverages in defense, and that's what they do. You do what you do. And
then tell real quick about the win within the win, or after the game, kind of how we celebrated different things, or even if you didn't win necessarily, and talk about how you built it at San Diego real quick.
Yeah, so we just had, we had the 6 goals, the field goal percentage, made threes, 3-point field goal percentage, kills. And so after every game, that we won, and some games that we lost, we'd address it if, hey, we didn't do this, we would let them know. But really, we celebrated after games, and really why we celebrated after games is the buy-in. So we got the guy who we thought was, the key guy to the game, and it didn't necessarily mean the guy who scored the most points. And we'd give him the marker and say, hey, coach would have the stat sheet and say, what'd they shoot? Or a guy would say, what'd they shoot from the field? Oh, they shot 35. And it was a big deal. They say, check. And everybody jumped up and celebrated. Yeah, we won that one. How many threes did they get? Oh, Cal got 2. Oh, check. We won that one. And so it just became a buy-in deal, and also became of guys were thinking, like at halftime, they'd come in and say, most guys at halftime, they want to see the stat sheet. My numbers, coach. But now they're going, hey, coach, how many threes they got? Hey, where are we at on the boards? Are we plus on the boards? Where are we at? And so, again, it's just selling what's important to your program and making guys buy in. But I thought, again, we did that really well. If I had it to go back again, I think I would do it with wins and losses, because, again, I thought when we got, 3 out of the 5? What was it? No, it was 6 categories. When we got 4 out of the 6 categories, we won 84% of our games. And so, again, that number to me, part of analytics is like, fuck, I'm not that smart. I'm not completely an analytics guy, but I know I want to win 84% of my games. Yeah, you know. Right. So if we're going to do those things, then 84 is pretty damn good. We'll be having some beers after the game.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up, fellas. We'll take one more question and then we'll thank these guys and then we'll wrap it up.
I guess Cody. I guess I'll get you a question. I know you showed me that like app, the player development app. Now, as far as the evolution of that player development app, what does that app actually generate? You know what I mean? Because again, you have all these reports and all this stuff. It's like, how much of that stuff are you typing in? How much stuff is that? Okay, is that generating for you? Because I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, again, y'all have these extensive reports, and you know, it's almost like
they're auto generated, right? So everything's loaded into the back end. I mean, and then just whenever you want to run them, honestly, we've got it to where they're on the next iteration of the app. They're going to be real time available on your phone. So you can pull up anybody's workout report and you're going to be able to dial in on different things and dates. So yeah, I don't, you know, I'm not a master. I mean, now don't get me wrong. Maybe I'm better than the average dude at Excel, but like, I'm no wizard, you know what I mean? And so to me, like, that's why all of our stuff that we're doing, the majority of it is going to be auto generated. And that's why, you know, I've got a dude who, was an intern with the Sacramento Kings who does analytics for a hospital. Like I've got two dudes who work remotely. One just finished his data analytics degree at UMass, his master's. And so like these dudes work remotely for free. And like right now I'm trying to help muscle my guy Alex into Nebraska, has like an analytics job open. So I'm trying to help him out. You know what I mean? Like, and he got some great practical experience helping us build our processes, like our in-house ones, like our pre and post game reports. But those are all tapped into various data vendors. And so like, we pull a lot of stuff from the play-by-play, you know, because everybody's got play-by-play. Like, y'all got access to it. So now we just get an XML of the play-by-play sent to him, and basically it goes to an email address, and and it just goes right into our system.
Wow. Hey, can you tell me what you told him? Because I found a guy that wants to do this. He's like volunteering to do things.
Yeah.
I just don't know how to, you know what I mean? Like focus him to something, you know, like that you've got.
So the first thing, like when we started, so number one is like, I felt like I was the Wizard of Oz, right? When I got to Houston, right? Cause I'm like, everybody want to know what this Daryl Morey character is up to besides, you know, tweeting out the China stuff and costing NBA billions of dollars. But like, you know, everybody want to know what's this dude doing, right? You know what I mean? And like, you know, they actually have like a Princeton football player over there named Monty McNair, who's like their guy. And so like, I got tight with Monty, and like, you know, Kevin McHale didn't want to see the whole reports. You know what I mean? Like I was thirsty for, I was like, show me this whole thing, man. It's like a 50-page report, right? They got this, the dude who actually makes the Houston Rockets run is this dude named Fan Hall. And he like sits in a dark room. I don't think there are any windows. I mean, he definitely partakes in some illegal drugs, but he's just like at a computer. I mean, it's like Facebook, like you see with the headphones on, and it's like, this dude is out here like coding up and producing these 50-page reports. And so, you know, I got close with him, and I just started learning bit by bit. And so when I went to Northern Arizona, they didn't have any analytics in place. And so I convinced them to allow me to bring on an intern who then got access to the information, because the NBA teams have the information. Second Spectrum has been providing the data, but it's all about what you do with it, right? Yeah. And so then, you know, I had my visuals from Houston. I said, I want this. And now he's able to figure out how to do it. So if you want to get with me, I'll be happy to show you, hey, like these are some ideas. Yes. And then it's like, you want this is what you want to show your guy. Yes. And now he's got to reverse engineer how to do that.
Yes.
And you've got to help your guys get better at. Did a Tim ever get better at free throw shooting?
Slightly. he actually, I mean, he was better his junior year than he was his senior year, but he graduated. That was the big thing. Like school is not his deal, man. And he's just back in Australia. You sent a little video.
Yeah.
He's doing great, man. I appreciate that too. I mean, again, he helped us. He helped us.
Good.
Well, guys, man, that was outstanding. You know, appreciate everything, Hoodie, Kevin and Cody and everybody else who jumped in. And this is tremendous stuff. And again, I say this every week, you know, we're obviously all forced to be kind of doing this right now because we're in quarantine and different things are going on. But I challenge you guys, you know, to how are you going to maintain this, and how are you going to work on yourself and continue to grow whenever it's life back to usual. And you want to be good, you want to be Cody, you want to be Kevin, you want to be you got to invest, man. And nobody's going to invest more than yourself. Nobody's going to bet on yourself more than yourself. So challenge yourself, man. Spend time. If it's Sundays, whatever it may be, you know, that you're off days. I know you got jobs to do, but this is what it takes to get good and actually also help our game grow and help our young men and women.
I wanted to just give the floor real quick to Coach Taylor, Division I head coach, and Marty Wilson. If you had any closing thoughts before we close it in prayer, just wanted to let you guys have the mic real quick, since you guys are other experts on the call.
I'm not an expert.
I know you're on the beach over there, D. I know you're on the beach.
That counts.
I forgot I didn't.
Shit's nice.
I forgot I didn't have my hat on. God damn, I look like a mess. I'll go real quick, and I'll let the knowledgeable Coach Wilson close this thing out. And the first thing I'll say is, man, this information is almost overwhelming. It's so good. It's unbelievable. And like Coach Smith said, it's imperative that you don't try to be someone else. It's imperative that you take what's relevant for you, whether you're an assistant coach or a head coach, to try to help make sense of this stuff, because you could easily get lost in the translation and end up not knowing your ass from a hole in the ground in a lot of ways. But like Coach Smith said, I think these types of opportunities are few and far between. I applaud everybody for getting on here and spending the time and investing in yourself and trying to build your own brand and your own craft. I think these are the ways to do that. And I also think that not only is it important for us to acquire this information, but it's also important for us to organize it and apply it. That's always the hard part, is you get all this information and you start, your mind starts racing. And then an hour or two later, you forgot applying what you just learned. And so I would encourage everybody to do that and continue to have these types of conversations, man. This stuff is powerful. Just when you think you got something nicked and you got a good understanding, somebody like Cody comes and just slaps the shit out of you with information that you've never heard of before. But again, it's just phenomenal. And also to grow our game, but we're dealing with a group of young men and young ladies that this is the way they communicate from a technological standpoint. And so if you aren't getting involved in learning how to translate these different types of languages, you might get lost in the shuffle. And so again, I think it's imperative for everybody to pitch in and do what you can to be relevant in this space, because this is the way that the trends are going. I appreciate you acknowledging myself and allowing me to say something, man, but this is powerful, dude. Super duper powerful. Cody, I appreciate you. Adam, Kevin, man, goddamn. Wow.
I put something on there too. Last week I took a class in coding from one of my buddies, really all about, you know, the sports analytics stuff. And so he's starting up a business, and he's a guy who used to coach college basketball, Aaron Warren McQueen, and he's doing terrific stuff for the community in the Bay Area and across the world. And I jumped on this coding class, and the coding class was based out of, it was like a camp out of Toronto. And I was obviously the oldest guy. The youngest, the oldest guy next to me on the call was 12 years old. And they had like 25, 30 kids on there. So again, what Dietrich said, you know, you got to sometimes get with the program or you get left behind.
Well, I'll throw my 2 cents. Monty, as you just talked about being the oldest guy on that one, I might be the oldest one on this one, other than Calvin Bird. He looks like he's 90.
Hey, but he was a McDonald's All-American.
He's a baller, man. He's a baller. His name is in the rafters up at St. Joe's. Again, like Coach Taylor said, a little overwhelming for me because I don't know it. And that's why I sat in. I'm glad I did. I had my little audio recorder sitting next to it so I can go back and listen to it again. There was so much information. Again, I'm going to reach out to you guys to try to learn more. I have a son who's a GA. He wants to get in this crazy freaking business, and I'm trying to talk him out of it like I've tried other people, but he's smarter than I am. He understands this stuff. He used to try to beat me upside the head. He was a manager for me a few years ago at Pepperdine, and he's gotten better. working with Tom Crean and their staff, and they have more people like you talked about, Cody, to be able to break all these things down. So he's learned it a lot more and more receptive. When I was starting, I was the third assistant restricted earning. We didn't do any of this shit. So it's new for me. It is a little overwhelming, but I'm eager to learn. I don't have all answers on anything. And so the game has changed as recruiting has changed from Bird when we started to what it is now. And we have to be able to adjust, and I'm willing to adjust. So again, I wish I had a hat, take my hat off to you guys, you young guys, for progressing the game. And as Coach Taylor said, share it, man, share it. We don't do enough in the college game, as in Cody, you've been a part at that other level. We don't do enough of this to teach, to share, to steal from other people. And we think we have all the answers in recruiting and coaching and all that bullshit. We're still in it from everybody else. So use it, share it, ask a million questions. I think our staff probably gets tired of me because I make our meetings go longer because I want to know why. I want to know what we're doing. So if I know what we're doing, when we're doing it, why we're doing it, I know how to explain it to our guys. So continue to share, continue to learn, to continue to grow. And once you think that you're too big for the game, get out, because it's going to bite you in the ass.
Well, fellas, so we do this every week, same time. We've changed it now where it's the same link, so you don't have to worry about if you get the link. If you don't get the link, same time. Next week we'll have Coach Wilson on to share with us some of his experience, along with Coach Jerome Tang, associate head coach at Baylor. So please feel free to join us every week. Bring a friend. We want to just keep sharing and growing and learning as best we can. So that being said, bow your heads. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this awesome, powerful time together to fellowship in the game we love. Thank you for Kevin. Thank you for Adam. Thank you for Cody. We pray that you continue to bless them as they continue to grow their careers and their staffs and their organizations and their programs. Bless all that they are doing in their programs. Bless both Kevin and Adam with their newborn children, learning fatherhood, and bless them with some extra sleep, hopefully. And then just bless all of us to be protected and be safe as we continue to open the country back up more and more and continue to be able to do more things. We just continue to be safe, mindful of those that may be more at risk for this COVID, and then just continue to help us just to be mindful of you, Lord, and all we do. In Jesus' name we pray. Have a great weekend. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hey, guys.